Good evening, my friend Ryan Butler.
Hello, my friend Terry Johnson.
It's so good to see you again.
You too.
So, is this going to be your first Breaking Down the Borders conference?
Yes, actually, it is.
Is it your first cyber conference period?
Um, yes, actually. I
How
had to think for a
interesting.
second.
That's very interesting. You know, this was the first ever cyber conference.
hmm
Now the internet is littered with them.
Yeah, yeah. Now you have
But
to be.
yeah, this is the fifth one, and we started this. I was peripherally a part. I think I was the hostess of the foyer. Seems to always be my role.
Yeah. So what
At
does the
Libra
host
Rising.
do?
Well, you know, I get people to talk to each other, and I keep people from shoving their charts up for the speakers
hmm
to
And
evaluate.
so this is kind of like the lateral move from the AFAN suite host at Soda,
Yeah,
but
actually,
now online.
I'm doing the interviews this time, so I don't think I'm doing the foyer. But I
Oh,
do want
cool.
you to know there's a foyer
Yeah. Okay.
because your fans will be there
Because
waiting
I
to
have to be
ask
in
you
the foyer.
questions afterwards. Yeah, yeah. It's BYO, whatever you want to drink.
Gotcha.
So, this will be your first cyber conference. I remember having a conversation with you that was, it
Oh
kind of
God.
changed my life really, when we were at Soda one year,
Mhm.
where I was talking about how astrologers could um, get more visibility and do more lectures without the expense of travel. And I talked about this, and you looked me straight in the eye and you went, "That doesn't replace this." And I was like,
It's
"Ooh,
true.
ooh, you're kind of right about that." You know? Although for the moment, this has to
Yeah,
replace
it has
that.
to now. Yeah, and it's funny how things go. Just kind of like how the world turns and how events play out. Because yeah, now we have to move things online, and they recently had NORWAC online, and while I guess the next conference down the line is ESAR in September, and I'm not sure where they're going to land on that, but it's probably looking more like they're going to move that online as well. So now here we are,
Yeah,
and
we have to make this work.
yeah, right, yeah, we do.
We have to all be friends in pixels.
Mm,
So, I have always wanted to sit you down and ask you questions for an hour or two, and I don't think anyone's ever been able to do that. And even I don't get to do it tonight because I have to ask you about your lecture and your work. But first, I want to ask you how you got interested in medieval astrology.
Um, so that story isn't really as exciting as it really, I think, should be, or a lot of people think it is. It was mostly just because as I was kind of getting more involved in astrology, um, I this was so to kind of set the scene. This is like 2006, and astrology forums were still things. I'm sure they still are to an extent now, but like much different than they are now. Where I think a lot of astrology forums are kind of like encapsulated in like Facebook groups and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And then like this isn't that. This is definitely probably a product of something of bygone era now. But I was a member of an astrology forum on Astrology Weekly for a while, and um, they had a section for horary astrology. I'm sorry, and that always kind of really fascinated me, just the idea of it. And so either I guess it must have been like 2007, 2009. I'm sorry, 2008, 2009. One of the individuals in the forum who I had kind of like been talking with a lot and whatever, they bought me a copy of William Lilly's Christian Astrology for Christmas. And so that was kind of like my first introduction to, not only like a textbook for horary astrology that wasn't just like other people's posts online or, links to questionable GeoCities websites, um, but also to like, traditional astrology kind of in general, like the first real taste of it. And so while that's really, more Renaissance astrology, that really is really kind of like the first opening of the door to like that history of astrology. And then just kind of like going down that rabbit hole to other authors and to other subjects is kind of what eventually got me here today.
But clearly, you did not start out there.
Right. No, nobody
So if
does.
you were already on a forum and
So
you're a young guy, so when did you get interested in astrology?
not that long before that, probably that same year, 2006, because I remember So a lot of people get involved in astrology for, I hate this story. So a lot of people get involved in astrology for like really important personal reasons. You know, they've gone through some kind of thing usually has happened to them. There's some event in their
Usually a
life
romance.
that, or like a medical condition,
Well,
or,
true.
you know, like something like that that's happened that they are struggling to like contextualize or understand. And so, you know, eventually they'll learn about astrology, and, you know, there's something about that that fascinates them, and they eventually use that to kind of find their answer and get kind of that understanding to help them, you know, kind of accept or deal with whatever situation that they're working with. I, on the other hand, got involved in astrology because in the 11th grade we had to do like our junior thesis, whatever, on like a topic, and there was like a list of topics that we could choose from, you know, kind of like all your standard things that high schoolers can write about that are like, you know, controversial but also like kind of tame and things like that. And so I picked astrology. I don't really know why. It was probably because it started with A and it was at the top of the list, and I was like, that one's fine. And so that's where I started. And I don't have that paper anymore, but it's actually really interesting because I don't think that event of me like picking to do astrology as like my topic and my interest in like older forms, medieval astrology, are unrelated, because one thing that I did spend a lot of time on was researching the history of astrology
Mhm.
for that. And like, so I already had it in my mind that like astrology was this ancient thing, and kind of like, you know, where it started and how it kind of roughly developed the time frame before I even really picked up my first astrology book, which I found because of that assignment. And it was actually Astrology for Dummies by Ray O'Ryan. And it's like literally like the yellow, like the bright yellow Astrology for Dummies,
You're
like
the
the book
first one
series.
that's ever said that was your first book. Yeah.
That was my first book. And I remember it made me really sad for a couple of reasons. First, because it talks about like how to actually calculate a natal chart. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I'm like, I'm out, guys.
Same thing
Like,
happened to me.
like in the back, it has like an ephemeris, and you can kind of like roughly estimate like where the positions were and things like that. But like to calculate it, I was like, ah, no, I'm out. I can't. So that was really
Same.
disheartening. And then thank God the internet happened and I found like a free astrology program. So I was like, ooh, that's fine. And then it got me really upset again because it was like, it had like a section about like different branches or types of astrology, where it would talk about like, oh, Chinese astrology and like electional astrology, and its little blurb on horary astrology, which obviously Mrs. Orion had no real like practical application with or like familiarity with.
Yeah.
Like, but her little blurb was like super fascinating, and I was like, oh man, I want to learn this. And then like it suddenly dawned on me that like I was in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and there was no way that I was ever gonna learn horary astrology. So imagine my surprise when like 2 years later, um, like some random internet stranger basically gave me a present of Christian astrology. So
It's fate, Ryan. It
so
was
it's fate.
fate.
And also, you know, don't be so easily disappointed in in
Yes.
your life
Don't,
circumstances,
don't,
because
yeah.
things change so quickly.
So true. So your topic for Borders is medical astrology. No, it's not. It's seeds and stars.
Which is kind of, it's the intersection of several topics.
It's almost the foundation, isn't it?
Yes.
Theme, what is that word? Can't believe I can't remember because I actually own the lecture and I've listened to it many times. Um, when things are the same, like a sunflower is like the sun,
Oh,
and
synthematos.
synthematus, that's the word. That's kind of foundational to medical
Yeah,
astrology, wouldn't you say?
yeah. It's definitely like the lecture and kind of the ideas that it covers are definitely like the intersection of several different like really significant parts of astrology, at least to me. You know, there's the astrology of it all, obviously. Um, but you know, actually, now that I think about it, I think that that is one of my like least astrological astrological lectures. Um, but it's you know, it's kind of like the intersection of astrology and, you know, medicine and herbal medicine and also magic.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's just like how all those three worlds kind of come together to, you know, on the one hand inform one another, but then also to like empower one another. And then how you can kind of take these simple concepts of things being similar to or related to one another, and then just kind of like uh what's that word, not elaborate, Oh, well, it's gone. But just kind of
Extrapolate.
extrapolate, yes. And just kind of like extrapolate from that to kind of find other connections
Yes.
kind of within the same realm
Yes.
or same subject.
Yes. And actually magic is part of your practice as well, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes. Hmm.
And that's, would you say that comes out of the medieval tradition more than any?
Yeah, probably. Well, I think it kind of starts there because the Pickatrix was translated kind of around that time period in the 900s, but then it was really like Ficino in like the 1400s that I think a lot of people um, kind of come back to in a lot of ways when
Mhm.
it comes to, at least for a while, before we had like a good translation of Pickatrix and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you treat your cats with astrological medicine or?
No, I
uh,
sure don't. I'm always nervous to do animals and herbalism.
because we don't know how they react to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit harder to like gauge. Like they can't be like, no, this didn't work for me. You're just like, just kind of like suspiciously watching them all the time, and I don't have time for that level of anxiety.
Do you use it on yourself?
Yeah.
Salves and oils and
Hmm.
tinctures, and that's good. That's good to know. We're really not going to cover that though, are we?
No, not
I've
in
had
this.
so
No.
many Ryan classes, I have to like go back and wait, which one is this? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what would you say, um, what will your students who come to this lecture learn primarily?
How to view the world in a different way, I think, and just sort of like so. I guess kind of to do it this way. I think that a lot of times, especially students of astrology, we're taught to kind of look at the world through a lens that's very like sign based. And so like one of the things that I really want people to learn is how to look at things more planet based, to kind of get more in touch with that practice and that tradition of seeing the world as like a collection of, like 7 different archetypes that are just kind of like strewn out throughout the world, and how we can use that information to connect back to real themes in either charts or within one's own magical practice, or like even within one's own herbal or medical practice, and like how those recurrent themes of sun illnesses and sun plants and treating and helping those kinds of issues or concerns in a more like hands-on practical way that ends up being more useful down the line.
Is the COVID pandemic a Mars disease?
So, I actually don't know exactly, but I did have a friend of mine point out that, so like, a lot of times when we're talking about like respiratory disorders, things that attack the lungs,
That's Gemini, or that's
that,
Mercury.
right. Yeah, the lungs are more of like a mercury organ. But like I had a friend of mine, she was like, I've been thinking a lot about about the astrological signatures of the coronavirus. I was like, okay. And she says, and it's just like a black ball with a bunch of red spikes on it. It's very Saturn Marsy. I was like,
Yeah.
I guess so.
And and it occurred,
Yeah, and it
at
happened.
that crucial juncture in our sky.
That's true too. Yeah. So I was like, oh, you may be right about that.
But you got to have some lungs involved there somewhere because that's
Yeah.
the chief culprit of the
Mhm.
disease. Oh, that's
Or
so interesting.
at least the organ that's like attacked. That was like the
Yeah,
attack hand motion.
I got that. I understood it perfectly.
Targeted. That was the word I was looking for.
Well, your lecture is called "Of Seeds and Stars,"
Mhm.
so we're gonna blend plants and the cosmos, and it's going to be on November 6th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 90 minutes, 4 to 5 p.m. at a Friday. So you get a first day lecture. You got a good
Oh,
slot.
yeah. So like it takes. So I'm one of those people who has a really unfortunate natal chart set up to where my Lord of the Ninth is in the 6th house. So I always get sick when I travel. So whenever I like have to do, whenever I like do conferences, I'm always like, please, dear conference coordinator, if I do it on the last day, I'll probably be sick and it'll be terrible. Can I please get on the first day? So tell me why it takes my involvement in an online lecture and like an online conference to finally
get
get the
that
first day lecture.
first day. I have the Lord of the 6th and the 9th also, and I also get sick every time I travel. So as much as I miss seeing you guys, I think cyber conferences are going to really work for me.
Right. It's like, oh, if I can just not get sick one time, that'd be great. So,
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you, and I hope you will join us, your students, and the lecture attendees in the foyer and chat afterwards. And
absolutely.
we'll look forward to it. Thanks for talking with us.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Good night.
Bye-bye.